I discussed earlier this week how the wide receiver room needs to be better for Georgia in 2025. I think that's vital for the team, especially when you think about how it's going to be Gunnar Stockton. It's going to be the first, assuming it's Gunnar Stockton, it would be the first year with him under center. And if it's not Gunnar Stockton, it's Ryan Puglisi or someone else, it's going to be the same case. You want experience and you want talent at the receiver room. So they got Branch, they went out and they got Noah Thomas. They added to that room. Well, Colbie Young, Georgia receiver. If you're not familiar, I'm going to give you the lowdown on that. He transferred from Miami a year ago, played a few games for Georgia, and was arrested back on October 8th for domestic violence charges. And he's been under investigation this whole time. He gets suspended from the team. Eventually, he returned to team activities, but was not allowed to play. He's now reached a plea deal with the solicitor's office at Athens, Clarke County. And he's going to be on probation. He's got to do a family violence intervention program. All that to be said is that opens up the door for him to return to Georgia. So far, there hasn't been an official statement from Kirby Smart or the Georgia football program in general, UGA. So I don't know. If all parties say, hey, we want you back, Colbie, and Colbie Young wants to be back, then he would return to the team. But right now, the word is out on that, but that possibility is now open. That door is now open. Let's talk about it. Ryan Curley from Dawg Post, the wide receiver room. I think it's a big topic this offseason, especially when it's going to be pretty fresh and pretty new. Let's just map it out real quick. Arian Smith going to the NFL. Dominic Lovett going to the NFL. Dylan Bell is returning. Anthony Evans went to the transfer portal. So you lose a few guys, but returning guys that I think will at least be out there. Dylan Bell, I think that upcoming sophomore, Nitro Tuggle, right, a freshman this past year, I think he is an exciting talent in that Georgia receiver room, someone that will be added to it. But then you think about the transfers that they brought in with Zachariah Branch and Noah Thomas. Those are guys that you expect to be primary players in that room. And so all of a sudden, a room that this past season had the most drops in college football, had lost Colbie Young and Ra Thomas to off the field issues, and had a quarterback who was pressing and was making things even more difficult for his receivers. They weren't making each other's lives easier. The entire offense went through a real rut, especially in that middle part of the season, especially late September, October, early November. That the team was struggling on that side of the ball. Well, now you look at this receiver room and you think about how all of those guys I named is going to be supplemented by freshmen that come in, right? And maybe one of them makes an impact. Two receivers in particular are exciting for people when you talk about. Unfortunately, I was cut off, but I'm back, and I know that what I wanted to talk to you about was how C.J. Wiley, four-star freshman, incoming receiver, along with Taylon Tabor, those are two guys that people are excited about, right? Bigger receiver in C.J. Wiley, and then kind of your more traditional speedster, do-it-all receiver in Taylon Tabor. All of a sudden, the outlook on the room, when you look, it's the end of January, right? So you got February, March, April, May, however many months, 7-8 months until this season gets underway. I'm very excited to see which guys kind of take over that first team spot. You're going to get an idea of it during spring practice, especially with early enrollees and early transfers. You're going to get to see pretty much the entire room. But back to the Colbie Young part of this, all right? I think that Georgia wants him back, and I think that he wants to be back on Georgia. That's what it looks like to me from the outside looking in. So my expectation would be that Colbie Young returns to the team. When you think about Colbie Young as a player, right? This is not for me to sit here and accost him or judge him. That's the legal system is doing that. And so, but what I have to talk about is, look, I think he's going to return to the team. So that's the portion of this that needs to be discussed. So what does that mean for Georgia, assuming that all works out? He's a guy who in the first 5 games, right, he played, the Auburn game was his last. That was this arrest and the suspension happened after that Auburn game and heading into the Mississippi State matchup in Athens back in October. And he's a guy who, through 5 games, look, the production wasn't like eye-popping. 11 catches, 149 yards, 2 touchdowns. He actually scored the first touchdown of the season for Georgia in Atlanta against Clemson. So he kicked off the season of scoring for Georgia, but the numbers weren't eye-popping. That's kind of not the point here when you're putting a positive spin on this for Georgia. The point is, hey, look, and I want to confirm this real quick. Colbie Young's 6'3", 6'4", 215 pounds. Those are the types of receivers who, for the most part, they do well at the NFL level. Now, I'm not sure that I view Colbie Young as an impact NFL receiver, maybe a guy that make a roster, but that is what Georgia's missing. And something else you get with Colbie Young are good hands, right? This is the kind of player that Georgia was severely missing, and it was him. And they missed Ra Thomas, right? And that's another off-the-field problem. His is a little bit more serious and is not resolved. He is no longer with Georgia, and he didn't play at all last season. When you don't have your guys, it makes things more difficult. But when you start to map out this room and you think about how obviously Lovett and Smith are gone, but you kind of got a little bit of everything with this incoming Georgia football wide receiver room. I know that I sounded a little doom and gloomy. I made it seem like, hey, look, things have to be better. I think that things have to be better because this offense, to me, is not going to function very well if the passing game is not good. To me, the jury is still very much out on the running game, right? When you copy and paste the running back room, when you are getting in largely a new offensive line, I don't know what that's going to perform. I don't know how that's going to perform. I don't know what Nate Frazier's progression is going to be. I don't know if either Robinson is going to be healthy. There are, to me, way more question marks in some of the other rooms on this offense. Now you're looking at this, and that's why I made my point in the other video, said these receivers are vital. Because if the other things are question marks, and this doesn't seem like a question mark, it needs to perform like there is no question about it. I think that if Colbie Young is around, at the very, very minimum, what is the biggest thing with that? Depth. Because what happens? You lose a couple guys, and all of a sudden, things become more difficult. But when you map out this receiver room, it looks like they've got a little bit of everything. You got a 6'6" guy in Noah Thomas that can play on the outside. Colbie Young, not quite as tall and big as him, but another big receiver on the outside. You get a little bit of that. You get a lot of speed from London Humphreys and possibly some inside game from London Humphreys. You get a lot of versatility. Dylan Bell had a bad year in 2024. There's no other way around it. He did not play as well in 24 as he did in 23. I think that you're going to see him maybe get the ball in some different ways, especially if Georgia doesn't add another running back. Why not hand the ball off to Dylan Bell? He averages a lot of yards per carry. He was Georgia's leading yards per carry guy for someone that had more than a couple rushes, right? Anthony Evans had the one for 52. But Dylan Bell, you give him 10 carries in a season, he ends up getting about 10 yards a carry. He's a guy who supplemented the running game in 2023. I think you'll see a little bit more of that in 2025 if Georgia doesn't figure out anything else with that running back room. So you get versatility from Bell. You get size from Noah Thomas. You get size and hands from Colbie Young. You get explosion from Zachariah Branch. Zachariah Branch is a legit recruit. I mean, remember, this is only 2 years removed from him being the number one receiver in the high school class that he was in, the 2023 class. So there's a lot of excitement there. You get explosion from him. And then you get youth and upside out of guys like Nitro Tuggle, out of guys like Taylon Tabor. You try to figure out what the deal is with them. I think that they're players that can be really good. We're working under an assumption that it's Gunnar Stockton. But like I said earlier in this video, whether it's Gunnar, whether it's Ryan Puglisi, whether it's someone else that we don't know about and I can't speak about because we don't know who they are, it's important that this passing game gets clicking. I think that you definitely saw flashes with Gunnar in that Notre Dame game. You saw that, hey, he could hit Arian Smith on a deep ball. He can hit Dylan Bell on a deep route. I can't remember if it was a post or some sort of in and out route where he ended up back near the out of bounds line, but on that deep ball that Dylan Bell eventually dropped. You saw him be able to hit guys in stride, in slants. You saw a lot of the use of the RPO against Texas. So the more that you add into the offense and the more skill that you bring to it and versatility, I think it makes things easier for a quarterback that doesn't have a lot of collegiate experience, and that's likely what Georgia is working with, and it's likely Gunnar Stockton. So I think this is important. And from a football perspective, Colbie Young being back on the team is positive. I can't speak on the legal part of it, but they've resolved that, and the door is open for him to return. That might happen for Georgia now, and if it does, they're in better position in that receiver room and deeper, and that's very important. You see how injuries affected the offensive line last season. You see how it affected the defensive line. It affected a lot of positions. It can affect a position that you start to feel strong about heading into the year, because then you're working from the top down, and there's going to be a lack of confidence in this team. But right now, I think there's a good level of confidence and a fresh start for this offense. And I think that that's important heading into this season. Thanks for watching. Colbie Young might be back.